Okay, my friends, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you know I quite often speak about the ancient writers. Specifically, Hesiod. He wrote what the daughters of Zeus told him to write about their ancient past and to glorify their father, who was Zeus, also known as Jupiter. And he was the god of the gods. And there was many of them. And they're all written out by Hesiod. And then later, and it's very, very detailed, right from the creation, how everything started, and it was just, nobody could ever possibly think that it could be true. However, it appears to be true. And he gets right down the whole line: Hercules and the Cyclopses and Titans and the giants and Zeus slaying Typhon, and you know, all the way down to where the gods changed themselves into animals, and it just stunning stuff. Now, Apollodorus later, about 600 years later, put all this stuff together, the earliest texts. And it's stunning, absolutely amazing. And it's not what we have been told, because it is the giants, the dragons, the great flood, the titans, battles in the heavens, all of that stuff. Now we can see the evidence that supports those just ridiculous things. However, if they're true, they're true. Just like Typhon and the fish in the desert, and the fish is Ares, and Typhon, is said, was attacking Ares, who changed himself into a fish. And they must have been in the heavens, but they're laying there now in Africa, and I've shown up hundreds of times. So my point is that I'm looking at the mythology totally different now. Not mythology. I don't see it in mythology at all. I see it as written, documented history. And it wasn't just in one place here, one place there. They all had the same catastrophes. They all had gods. They all had dragons. They all had monsters. They all had giants, all that stuff. Every one of them had the same story. And they had the Great Flood at the same time, which wasn't that long ago. According to Velikovsky, the accounts around the world where it was about 1500 BC. And that accounts for all of the sea peoples and all of this lost history from the flood. And then, as Velikovsky said, the ages of chaos. It was chaos. After the flood, 100% chaos. There was just nothing left, basically, that was there in the beginning. It was a restart, and there wasn't much oxygen now. They couldn't even start fires, because there just wasn't enough oxygen. And as the plants started to regenerate the oxygen level, it went like crazy. And that's how come you had the copper age. They could only get so hot to make copper. Then you got the bronze and the iron age and so forth. And there's melting points. Iron, you got to get it real hot to melt. And then when it fuses together, it makes a real strong steel. The other ones were just too soft. You didn't have enough. Basically, it's crystallization inside the metal. Copper and bronze and brass and all that stuff is a much weaker metal. It's more malleable. But you need extreme temperatures. And that means you need extreme amounts of oxygen. Oxygen is the only thing that makes it get, as you bellows, get hotter and hotter and hotter. Well, that's because you're fueling it with the oxygen, and that's from the plants. Now, we got issues in the atmosphere now. That's a whole other issue. Let's, I keep going off on these tangents, but we're going to be going into the Nag Hammadi text. Okay, you know my opinion is I search every text there is, and I read them all. Well, I haven't read them all, but I nipped the bits and pieces, and Velikovsky put things together very, very concisely about the actual history and the events and what was recorded in what cultures, and basically it describes actually the impact in the Grand Canyon. About the whole West Coast erupted at one instant, and that was written down. You got to do a lot of searching to find these stories, but these stories were just everywhere. They all had the same basic time frame when these events happened. I think I've said this over and over, but you have to understand, this was not just a one-off here and a one-off there. Everybody said the earth was wrenched, the earth was overrun with waters, there were certain areas that were gouged out terribly, which was the Grand Canyon. And that's recorded. They said the whole West Coast it was erupted, and that was when the impact of Venus electrically discharged and ripped the guts off the top of the earth. And you can see right down in there, there's nothing but bloody guts. Now, here's the issue. The Gnostic text addresses this in this manner, which this realm should not exist. We're not supposed to be here. It says, in the Gnostic tradition, the material realm was widely viewed as flawed, imperfect creation resulted from a divine mistake, literally an abortion, or a premature, unauthorized act of creation. We should not be here because we were not a union of two perfect entities, basically. And here's what happened. Pistis Sophia. Well, let me read to you. She tried to make everything herself. She thought she could. She wanted to go up into the treasury of the light. Now, I haven't read this, so I don't know how to explain it. But my understanding of this is Pistis Sophia was in the 13th aeon, which down below is the slums, and up above you want to get to that perfect light. It's called the treasury of the light, and you get in there, I guess you're good to go. Now, so that's what she was heading for. She was trying, but she didn't have a consort. She didn't have somebody to work with. So here's what they're saying. This is the myth. Well, I don't think it's a myth of Sophia and the demiurge which she produced, which is Yaldabaoth. So here goes. This Gnostic teaching is detailed in several texts, including the Apocryphon of John from the Nag Hammadi library, which predates the Pistis Sophia. In this version of the Sophia myth, the story unfolds as follows. Now here's how he's saying Pistis Sophia came to give birth to what we know as the solar system. Now it says the pleroma. In the highest spiritual realm, the pleroma dwelled the divine aeons or emanations of the supreme perfect God. That's the treasury of the light. All right? That's where the pleroma is, in the highest spiritual realms. Now, Sophia's desire, the youngest and lowest of these aeons, where she was in, was the 13th, I believe. Sophia, meaning wisdom. I guess that's where you have to gain wisdom. Now, she desired to create something on her own, a whole new, basically, universe, I guess, without her divine consort. So you need to have give and take. You got to have a balance. It was an act of both hubris, she wanted to be better than everybody else, and ignorance. She didn't realize how bad it would be. Now, they call it an abortion. The abortion, her act of independent creation, was a failure. The resulting entity was a formless, incomplete being, an abortion or miscarriage. Now, could that be the earth? It's a complete being? Well, it's incomplete, but it's still a body. The birth of the demiurge. The formless being was cast out of the pleroma, so it was way up there in that, where, gods are, the good top gods. It was cast out of that pleroma, where it eventually took shape as the demiurge, or an ignorant and arrogant creator god named Yaldabaoth. So he's not in the treasury of the light. And that's where she wanted to get to be. But she didn't have her consort. So anyway, she gave birth to this arrogant creator god named Yaldabaoth, who thought he was the god of all gods. No. The material creation. Material creation just means matter. The demiurge, and the matter is not what you want to be. You want to be light. Is the way I'm seeing it. You want to go to the light. We are children of the light. All right. Now, light, although it is made of dipoles, so it's a little tricky. But anyway, the material creation, the demiurge, unaware of the higher spiritual realms, didn't realize there was higher than him, mistaking itself for the only God. I am the God of all. No, he was the lowest of the imperfect gods. He created the imperfect material universe and the archons, which are the malevolent, nasty, mean, violent rulers who control it. So he created a universe controlled by nasty, mean rulers. The Gnostic thus viewed the material world as a crude matter, a false imitation of the true higher reality. That's pretty serious. And that was their writings. Now, the Pistis Sophia and the abortion. The text known as Pistis Sophia recounts a variation of the Sophia myth. It's portraying her fall into chaos and eventual redemption with the help of the resurrected Jesus. This is where the Gnostic texts come in. And the Pistis Sophia text and the Gospel of Truth and all that stuff. Very, very deep stuff. All right, while differing in some details, the texts also operate within the broader Gnostic framework that views the physical realm as an imperfect creation resulting from Sophia's error. She shouldn't have done it. She knew, I think, she shouldn't have done it, and she did it. All right, in this account, matter is also described as being expelled like an aborted fetus. The matter that she created was so imperfect because it didn't have maybe compassion, or it didn't have all of the elements that make what you want to consider a perfect human being. And trust me, I'm nowhere near perfect, but I way off of that. And I have a lot to make up for, and I'm trying. Now, but this would be expelled as a fetus from the shadow and disturbance that resulted from Pistis Sophia's action, emphasizing the material world's flawed and accidental nature. We want to escape from this material world. That's the way Gnosticism speaks. You want out of the material world into the brilliance of the perfect light. All right, let's see if we can support Immanuel Velikovsky, my personal hero, and we can. And he claimed in Worlds in Collision that Venus was ejected from Jupiter, and in one place he says the feared god Jupiter, as a comet around 1500 BC. Well, the Great Red Spot is literally a female body part that gives birth, and I will show you. It made multiple close passes with Earth, never impacting, he claims. I say it might have because of the Grand Canyon, however, we'll look at that in a minute. It went about 52 years, then passes, he argued, caused global catastrophes, natural disasters, all kinds of problems, earthquakes, tsunamis. All the ancient, they all had these mythologies, they claim, described ancient mythologies, religious texts, such as the plagues of Egypt, the parting of the Red Seas. His theories were based on interpretations of ancient texts. He didn't just guess this stuff. All over the world. And he proposed that electromagnetic forces, which was the electric discharges, I'll show you that too, not just gravity, played a significant role in celestial mechanics, but they were ultimately discredited by the scientific community, and they made him appear to be a crazy person. Well, let's see where this would happen, and I'm going to lead you right through it, because I'm going to show you how I think it did happen. And there's going to be a very graphic shot of a female vagina, because I want you to see the one that's on Jupiter. They could change themselves into any sex they wanted, any size they wanted, male, female, whatever they wanted to do. That's what these gods were capable of doing. And if you read Ovid, well, let's read Ovid. All right, this is one of the most important works in history. This was Ovid, O-V-I-D. Metamorphoses means to be something to be able to change, like a caterpillar into a butterfly. And he wrote this in around the same time as Christ, 8 CE they call it, Roman poet Ovid. Now, this was about, at the time of Julius Caesar, he used over 250 myths. Now, they call them myths. I don't call them myths. I call them ancient documents. And he had 15 books. 12,000 lines. Now listen to this. The first 2 lines refer to mud fossils. I'm not kidding you. Hold on, stay with me. Don't go anywhere. The first 2 lines. Hold on. All right, so here it is about Ovid. And he wrote at the time of Julius Caesar, and which was just about the time of Christ. And it was, the Metamorphoses was a monumental Latin epic about the from the Roman poet Ovid. Comprised 15 books that chronicled the history of the world through over 250 Greek and Roman myth, unified by the central theme of transformation. It says, the narrative spans from the creation of the cosmos to the deification of Julius Caesar. They made him a god, exploring the fundamental nature of change and the often violent, chaotic world shaped by the gods' actions. And it says right here, the theme is, as the title suggests, Metamorphoses, overarching concept. First 2 lines talk about this, with characters, gods, and even the landscape undergoing dramatic changes into plants, animals, other forms. These gods could change themselves into anything they wanted. Anything they wanted. And there's a lot of theme of violence and lust, brutal world. The gods themselves were personified as jealous, spiteful, loving. They were like creatures, but that was their influence on the world, I guess, as gods. It's very confusing, but it's also hard to dismiss a lot of this. Now, this is the most important book, I think, in history, which is Ovid, Metamorphoses. He goes through the creation, the ages of mankind, the flood, to Kalian, who we know as Noah, his wife, and all these other gods. And there's book 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 15. And I mean, he goes up to here, there's Achilles and Ulysses and Ajax and the fall of Troy and all of these, Hercules and the Minotaur and all of those things, he wrote them as they were real. All of this was passed down. Now, the theme was this. Listen to this now. This is Metamorphoses. They say it's Greek myth. No, I say it's Greek history. He says in the first 2 lines of book 1 out of 15, lines 1 and 2, he says it's Metamorphosis, transformation, a unifying theme amongst the episodes of the Metamorphoses. Ovid raises its significance. So transformation of creatures into whatever. He raises the significance explicitly in the opening lines of the poem. In nova fert animus mutatus decere formos corpora, which means I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation they transform into part of the natural landscape. Mudfossils. The theme amalgamates, then they throw in all this stuff about tension between a hunted and a hunter. Well, maybe. But I'm talking about the actual things that exist. Now, what could they change themselves into? A great variety among the types of transformation. From human to inanimate objects, bowls and whatever, into constellations. That one I find a little hard to believe, but into animals, into plants, from animals into funguses, into mushrooms. They can change themselves into humans, from one sex to another, which is Jupiter did. They can go into hyenas. They could become colored pebbles, one color or to another. And they say it was often they were just joking. No, they could actually do these things. That's my opinion. All right, I'm just going to take you right through the whole thing. This is the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. Jupiter's gigantic. And that red spot, this is the size of Venus coming out of that red spot, which literally is a vagina, as I will show you. Now, that is the bump. It's called a Venus Mons, which is on a vagina. And the planet is spinning this way, and the clouds are very dense, so that as they come, this has to plow through that very dense soup, and it just spins off here. That's not a storm. That is a bump. It has to pass through this heavy, dense layer, and it spins off. That's all that is. So here's the birth of Venus from the Great Red Spot. Now, this is a true vaginal birth. It's going to have afterbirth. It's going to have blood. It's going to have a lot of hydrocarbons. It's going to have the placenta. It's going to have the umbilical cord. It is a literal birth, and all of those things happen to Earth, as I will show you. Okay, if you don't want to see some planet porn, don't look, because I'm going to show you a literal vagina, which is right behind her, the Great Red Spot. And then I'm going to show you one as a human, and show you the little tag at the bottom, which holds the vagina literally into the body. It's locked in there with this tab, and I'll show you. I'm not just playing games here, but it's crazy, but it's true. So we're going to see this is going to be the next thing you're going to see is a gigantic vagina, and then you're going to see a human vagina. The only way I can prove my point, so it's up to you if you want to watch. All right, that's the vagina. Now there's sort of soft tissue up in here, labia majora, vagina, whatever it's called, urethra, all that stuff. These are the ripples of the vaginal canal. Nobody can really deny this that's ever seen one. I mean, that's just what it is. Now, this even is the hairline. You see that? That's the hairline. That's not just there for nothing. And that is the tab that I'm talking about that holds it into the body. You cannot miss this. You see the stalk coming up there and that little locked in pin there? And those two tabs, those two little dots there are where the interstitial fluid flows between this organ, which is going to be totally different chemistry than around the anus. And that fluid probably has to get down into the anal canal area, and there's going to be a separation of fluids, I believe. And I believe that's where this happens. There's little organs in here. I've seen them in my microscope, and I've looked at this, not with vaginas, but it's on everything. It's on everything. They all have that little latch when you go, well, here's one right here. This is a little different, but it's that latch right there. It's basically the same as like this. It locked this piece of tendon which you see how it's really white here, then it tapers off into really silvery looking stuff. But right up where it attaches, it's very white and strappy. And then there's that latch. And this one's just like flesh. And that latch does have the two little dots at the end. I don't think you'll be able to see them here, but I have it in a microscope. I've seen it a million times. So this is the latch we're talking about. Now, here comes the anatomical shot, which is a human vagina. All right, get ready. Here it comes. Here it is. Boom. There's that latch I'm talking about. You see? All the rest is the rest. I mean, that's what it is. And there's that bump, which is called the Venus Mons. And this is plowing through the atmosphere, swirling around this way. So this is sort of twisted a hair. You can see this is going to come over this way because the whole thing is being twisted. And it does. It's just exactly what it is. There's no denying this. You see it? See how it's twisted off this direction? Everything's sort of, you know, there's going to be that vortex. It's going to be pulling that thing this way. And on this side, he has the same thing. So it's coming through. This is the orientation coming through. Some's going this way, some's going this way. But primarily, you're going to drift off this side. And you see it pulling itself in here? That's not a storm. That's tissue being twisted. And the latch at the bottom is also twisted over because it's just if it was relaxed and there was no push, that would be just straight up and down. Everything here makes 100% sense when you know how to look at it with Mudfossil eyes. So now I've shown you that stuff. We've seen that it came out of Jupiter as a fiery comet. And again, vaginal birth. When it hit Earth, it came down with blood and stones and manna, which is hydrocarbons. Velikovsky recorded all this stuff, and it's all recorded in the Bible too. And that caused all the plagues and the parting of the seas and all this. When these events happened, it was an absolute nightmare on Earth. Exactly what Velikovsky claimed. Now, so here it comes, out from Jupiter. Well, in the ancient text, it says it hit Earth almost. And here's where it almost hit Earth, is in the Grand Canyon area. These are uranium mines. The reason they're here is because something impacted and forced so much energy into the ground here that it's trying to release itself and get back out. And that's why you hear click, 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 click. Their bonds are breaking to try to get away. Too much energy in one spot. That's what nuclear radiation is. It wants to break the nucleus down to say, I'm not that big. I don't want to be that big. I'm too big. And then they break down into what you might call stable elements. But here, something pushed all that energy in there, and not only that, it ripped the guts, the literal guts, out of whatever creature was here. And there was creatures here that you know, over here, this is Quetzalcoatl's area over here, Scorpzilla's over here, whatever here, I don't know what it was, but it ripped it right down. Vermilion Cliffs is nothing but bloody guts. You see that? That's stomach tissue or intestine. And all that red stuff, that's basically blood. All right, that's, or lymph. Whatever it is, it's in the ear, and it would be absorbing from this tissue. That's how you absorb stuff, through your intestinal tissues and your membranes. And this is not exceptionally large membranes. They're big, but they're not huge. I'll show you some other ones my friend Tyson Carlson found. Him and Scott Wiles out on the west coast in Oregon. And that's not even in the Grand Canyon area. It's a whole nother creature, which is, I call him Scorpzilla. I'll show you that. The whole world is made out of giant biology. This is the same as membranes, only this one's 6 feet thick. You see this top layer? And then here down to here, it's somewhere around 6 feet. That's the lower layer. This layer right in here is the membrane. These are what they call protein channels, ion channels, that allowed things to go in and out selectively. There's another little squirrely looking thing that comes up here. Now, what I want you to look at is, first of all, the enormous size of this. This is out on the coast of Oregon. And this is Tyson Carlson. Nice guy. Did a lot of work out here. The same as everybody else, they just rejected it. Now, you see those little layers around right around there? They all have that. These are made to be mucous membranes. The mucus slurp is supposed to be all over this, so that it can bend and twist and jiggle and do all these things, but they never open up and through here, so you don't get invaded. Now they call it tight membranes, and there's a bunch of different layers into these membranes. If you could see going down here, they're pretty thick. Well, you can see over here. You see how thick they are? And each one of them blocks up to another one, and they have to stay mobile so they can do all that kind of stuff, but they can't come apart. And that's where the glue comes in. So this is what they look like right here. This is what the phospholipids. Now, so that's phosphorus basically, bilayer, which means 2 layers of the phospho. And these are these protein channels, cholesterol in here, whatever that thing is. And that's what the membranes are. And they have to stay like this. A membrane is a separation layer. It's just exactly what it does. If you have weak membranes, you're going to get invaded. And how do you get weak membranes? Invasion of the bacteria that creates the mucus, that creates the enzymes. It's one big thing, but it all starts with bacterial enzymes. All of this is new understanding, and a lot of it is based on mud fossils. Finding that particular layer of interstitium, which is the layer that is your immune system, basically. And they just came back from Bennu. I keep showing this over and over. This is a heart. That right there is a heart valve, and a heart valve. This is a heart. They hit hard, went inside, grabbed a chunk, and brought it back to Earth. And that chunk is this right here. And these are heart sarcomeres. You get a good doctor anatomist to tell me that I'm wrong, and I'd love to talk to him. These phosphates were totally unexpected, and they are layers that layer the sarcomeres, which these are. So here's where the layers of the white stuff is, this phospholipid, and that's lit up using a certain type of light. This is the same thing as that. Then they come down to this size, and that's this. All right, you see this little chunk coming off here and this little chunk. That's the layer underneath. These are the sarcomeres. That's the layer on top. All right, those layers inside here, those blocks, are these. Those are sarcomeres. They don't just happen like this by accident, because first of all, you have all the chemistry here, and then you have all the anatomy here. And then you can look at it and see it's a heart here. And that's all muscle, and here's a heart here on Earth, the same thing, muscle. Phosphate layers, same thing. No difference whatsoever. They have to be able to slide back and forth with that gooey phosphates. It's the same as this right here. And it's the same as the stuff up on Mars. Up on Mars is this. They say this happened continually, millions of years, layer after layer. What caused that? What caused this? What caused these splits here? Those are the splits in sarcomeres. These are the connective tissue part of sarcomeres, the tough stuff, so that it has some structural integrity. This is the gooey stuff that's just, dusting out of here because there's no water up on Mars. There's never been a water hit there. All right, this here is vein blood. All right, this, and the red stuff is the red blood, the artery blood. This is the sarcomeres. And they say millions of years? No. That was something fell over dead and started that process. It's everywhere. It's not just here or there, even all over the earth. These milky marbles are the same thing as the Mars blueberries. And Mars was the same as Earth, exactly the same. And these are nothing more than these, only these still have a lot of stuff to eat. They'll probably never get quite that small. They'll maybe be this big when they're done. I don't know. These are little balls. But they're everywhere, and that's just part of the body proper. You see that? Again, picture down, 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 down till you get to here, which is what's inside of our tissues. So that lets it get this way and that way and bring this way and that way, and they are strapped in to these straps and these fluid-filled bags, so you can pull and swish and do this and that, and they're all supposed to come back to where the balls are, and these are the balls. And so are these. And this is the flesh where the balls are coming out of. All right, they're just collecting over here. The skin is just dropping. That's skin. Same thing. Here's the skin. Here's the flesh being eaten away by the ocean. It's just dropping. The balls are laying all over the place like this. And up on Mars, they call them the Mars blueberries. Exactly the same thing. You can see the basement layers. All the stuff on Mars, the Mars crab, the Mars the Mars blueberries, the Mars, all kinds of Mars. See, those are the Mars blueberries. They're identical. And this is the identical basement layer of the skin. So you got, this is where your skin rides back and forth inside. And they're supposed to be anchored here or there. And it's supposed to be a nice even anchoring. If you pulled this together, some of the straps would be pulled and some of them would be pinched. And I can see that up on Mars as well. Just look this up. These are Mars Morse code. These are the strapped where the balls are anchored, and this thing is pulled really tight. And it's pinched here, pinched here. This is sort of evenly laying around. These are a little bit stretched. These stretched so far that they basically ripped and eroded. And here's where it's scrunched together. That's skin up on Mars. And this is pretty good size. I'm not sure but it's good size. It's not small. And all of this came from the Curiosity mission. And so did the Mars crab. All right, here's the Mars crab. Where are you, Mars crab? Here it is right here. So this is that picture right here, is from here. Now, I know I showed you sarcomeres. Here's all the connective tissues, and these are the breaks in the sarcomeres. There's no other explanation for this. And that right there is an artery. And coming out of the artery, all those little blood vessels going in to service the muscle that was right around it. And when you have an artery, you normally have a vein coming back, which you do. The artery is nice pinky red. The vein is just slurps back the stuff that surrounds it. You see, this is so perfect because you can see a cavity around here. That's exactly how veins work. They have sort of a surrounding medium around them that filters all the stuff in, and just the bad stuff goes. The rest gets sucked back into the lymph. And you are loaded with lymph. Anyway, this is muscle. I mean, there's just no getting around it. There's just no way to deny this. And this is from Mars, and I know it's from Mars because there's never been any erosion here. There's no water up there. There's no plant life. You got to have plant life, and you got to have oxygen, you got to have atmosphere. All of that was stripped from Mars when it got hit by Venus. You see that? That's what happened when Venus hit Mars. That's Mars. That's wider than the United States. So that's much worse than the Grand Canyon. But the Grand Canyon was pretty bad. So this was at the end of Venus after it hit or almost hit Earth, and maybe twice. Again, we got to read Velikovsky with a little more details. But then it hit Mars and wiped Mars completely out. And this was about 800 BC, I believe. And basically that's about the same time as Mars came down to Rome and became the protectorate of Rome. Ares, they called them Mars, Ares, whatever you want to call it. Now, how did Venus end up with this? Well, here's what happened with Venus. This is an electric discharge, welding arcs. Now, we all have magnetic fields, and they're just nothing more than charged particles, tons of charged particles in our atmosphere, and extreme amounts of them in the ionosphere. Ionosphere means charged particles, and they are extremely reactive, which Mars had its own atmosphere just like we did. Now, I think we had two different incidents here. I think one of them was Mars and one of them was us. But these are both discharges into Venus. Venus spins backwards. Now, I believe that's why it wanted all that energy rather than discharging down to us. It spins backwards. Now, I haven't really played around with the thought about that yet too deeply. I'm just trying to understand what I'm seeing here. And this is a welding arc. So there's no question, hit this, which is Venus. And it just stripped it from Mars. And it did from the Earth for a while, as Velikovsky said. And because of this enormous amount of energy, it impacted Earth and forced electricity, well, energy, deep into the guts, which I showed you are guts of the gouged out Grand Canyon. Now, don't forget, right, we're off the coast of Oregon was where Tyson is doing his work with the membranes and stuff out there. So this is not part of the impact. It has nothing to do with the impact. The impact is basically right here. Nothing over here. Nobody over here was affected. That's when you see uranium, it just has too much energy. The only way you put something to get too much energy in it is to force it in. It's not just going to walk over and say, can I have too much energy here? They say, no, stay the hell out of here. That's what happened over here. These are basically stable regions. This is energetic. There's a lot of energy here. And the energy wants to break down and become stable like everybody else. To me, that's a pretty obvious indication that that would be the impact site. And they did say on that west coast, which they survived on these up in this area here, they said this whole area boiled with. Well, we got to read Velikovsky again. He recorded it, so I'm not taking credit for his stuff. He recorded all of these from everywhere around the world. It takes some legwork. He didn't even have the internet back then. He walked into these places and said, show me what you got, tell me what you heard, who said what, do you have any library information, do you have any statues, do you have any monuments, do you have any cultural centers? And he would get all that stuff and he recorded it very, very, very deeply. And for presenting the things like I'm presenting here, truth, he was just basically destroyed in his career and so forth. But this is where it tore the guts. Ooh. Wow. What the hell was that? This is where it tore the guts out of Vermilion Cliffs. That's some kind of biological tissue. Just like I showed you the ones from Tyson. Look at the size of that. In us, this piece right here, you could hold it up and you see right through it. Almost like it wasn't there. These are, and even red blood cells in every cell in your body has a membrane around it like that. Think of how small they have to be. And if you don't have the membrane, or that membrane's damaged, that cell's going to get infected. That is the protection that protects what's underneath here from what's above it. You can get scraped and cut and all. I get it all the time. But the stuff that's right under there should attack from this, what they call the interstitium now. There's a layer in here that is a fluid-filled highway. As a matter of fact, it's right here. All right, one of these layers, and I believe it's before you get down into the vital flesh. So it might even be this layer right here. All right, and this I think is fat. But I think this is the interstitium, which if you break through there and get into the good layers down here, which are the tissues of the body, then you're going to get in trouble. The fluids have to come and fight that stuff before it takes hold and invades and starts to grow tumors and find a comfortable living place. Because that's what infection is. You have to have your guys come in and disinfect. Otherwise, it gets in there, finds a good place to live. Well, you know, it might be uncomfortable for you, but it might be extremely comfortable for that creature. And that's all it is. It's just trying to make a living. All right, you got to make it so that that's an uncomfortable place. You don't come here. And that's what your interstitial fluid does, which is your lymph fluids in your body. It's a brown, clearish fluid, carries all the enzymes, mostly all of them, and sends the troops down to attack. You learn a lot from mud fossils, a real lot. They never knew this layer existed, this interstitium layer, which I believe is probably that layer right there. You see it? If you can get down past that, then you're going into something that is tissue that you don't want to have invaded, because it will support life easily. Stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Stage 4 is where it breaks down, and those little creatures that were living up above there, nobody's bothering them, so they just keep going, and they go down, and they get down into down in here, and that's an invasion. This kept everything out that way. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to point around at a couple things. They landed up here. We're mud fossil people. We know what the red and the black and the yellow indicate. Those are the colors of blood. Those are the 3 colors of the blood. And these are the actual colors. They actually took these pictures as they were coming down here. Now, it might be a little spiffed up, but this is basically the colors. And that's exactly what happens. The black stays away from the red. You see them? They're not mixed together here. I showed this over and over and over. And they hit so hard that they went down deep enough and they grabbed a hold of muscle and popped back right out of there. Point of impact. Bam! They shot a whole batch of nitrogen gas and it cleared the way, and it went so deep they didn't expect that. And they grabbed the muscle and they brought it back. And it is muscle because that's a heart. And here's the muscle that they brought back. Here it is right there. I know I showed this, but I'm gonna, you can't see it enough. Here it is right there. And there's rope muscle in here too. These are strands of rope muscle. If you dug back in here, you'd find them. See, it's actually, I think you can see them here too. But anyway, there's rope muscle in here as well. And here's what the rope muscle looks like right here. That's the rope muscle. Once you cut it and you look at it in little blocks like they did, you can see the sarcomeres. And between every one of these little layers, they have to have in between the sarcomeres, they have to have those phosphate layers so that they can glide back and forth against each other. And this is where the heart is up here, the tendon. This pops off because it's iron banding. There's a black and red there that oppose each other. They will not stay, as I showed you, and where their landing site was. They don't like each other. They push apart. And here's Psyche. You see the colors? You see the valves? That's another heart, absolutely gigantic. And this is what they said in these ancient texts. I'm not making this stuff up. I just want people to wake up and say, let's look at it and see, does it make sense? And there's no way you can say it doesn't make sense. There's that Psyche. You see the colors? There's the red, there's the yellow, there's the black. The black is vein. You see how close these two colors are? This one here, there's another one, there's a pulmonary one. Well, I don't want to say what it is or isn't, but there's one that also pumps the lymph fluid as well, I believe. And that's a tube coming out of this heart. Now, if any heart surgeon can say, no, this isn't what it is, I'd like to see that heart surgeon. These are the ferrous oxides, different colors. I just want reality, and they should know that they're dealing with heart tissue here. They want to find what this is. It is heart tissue, just as that's heart tissue, just as this is heart tissue. That's heart tissue because it came from a heart. That came from a heart too. I know for a fact. That, I don't know what kind of muscle it is, but it's absolutely, definitely, no question whatsoever, muscle. Just eroded. Not continually over millions of years at all. We need to rethink the things that we've always accepted. And I'm saying right now, you have to accept them in order for them to give you a piece of paper that says you are smart. And trust me, if you keep saying what they're telling you, you're not smart. You're just wasting your time buying a piece of paper. Now, if you go to learn something that's functional, that's a whole different story. You know, whether it's computer programming or maintenance or even how to build roads and highways and chemistry, all that stuff, that's all, I go with that. But just archaeology, anthropology, history, geology, no. They're just not paying attention to what's in front of their faces. And this, I believe, was an impact, caused a reuranium, and this is just enormous amounts of energetic reaction with energy, literally welding arcs. All right, and nobody's just denying this. That's the key. Nobody would deny it, but nobody talk about it. And this is what happened to Mars. It all started from Jupiter, giving birth to Venus. Now don't forget, Velikovsky records the ancient impact of Venus into Earth around 1500 BC. This is scholarly estimates put these events at 1470 BC. That's pretty damn close. Now, these are the 10 plagues of Egypt. There was blood fell all over the earth, the plagues occurring in sequential order. Water turned to blood. That came out of the sky, blood, because of the afterbirth from Venus. Gnats, flies, livestock, pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. It was, and I don't know about the death of the firstborn, that could be, but this is something that was from the impact of Venus. All right, so this is Immanuel Velikovsky, and he wrote several books, and they forced the publisher to take him off the bookshelves, and they just came out like in paperback. They just dismissed him and really destroyed him as being the scholar that he was. He was a friend of Einstein. He was no idiot. He was engaged in going around the world and getting all these stories. Now, this was Immanuel Velikovsky claimed in his book Worlds in Collision. Venus was ejected from Jupiter as a comet around 1500 BC, multiple passes with Earth over 52 years, so it must have come around. These passes, he argued, caused global catastrophes, natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, described in ancient mythologies and religious texts. such as the plagues of Egypt and the parting of the Red Sea. His theories were based on interpretations of ancient texts and proposed that electromagnetic forces, which is the Earth and Venus colliding, not just gravity, played a significant role in these celestial mechanics. But they were ultimately discredited by the scientific community. They called him a nutcase, a pseudoscientist. He didn't know what he was doing. He went around and recorded from all the ancient texts. He didn't make these things up. It was said by these ancient people that he was ejected from Jupiter, and Velikovsky theorized that Venus was expelled from Jupiter as a massive comet-like object, which was what was written. The comet-like passage, this monstrous comet, which was Venus, passed near Earth multiple times in the 15th century. Catastrophic effects, near misses with Earth caused immense destruction, including stones from the sky, which was recorded. The stones from the sky were the umbilical cord. That would be made out of nothing but little blocks of stone. It would be, that's a very, very tough, big strappy thing. And all of that stuff with the stones would come down, and red rivers, because you had the blood, ocean disruption, of course, all that, shift in the Earth's orbit and axis. All right, Velikovsky recorded. He argued that these events were recorded. Yes, they were recorded as mythology. They weren't mythology, they were real things. And religious stories in various ancient cultures. But they pushed it off to the side. They said, these people are crazy. They're insane. Just leave them alone. Let them go out in the woods somewhere. And just don't listen to them. That's what they did. And they're still doing it today. Now, manna fell from the tail of Venus. Well, what's manna? It's like bread. It's like breadcrumbs. He proposed that the comet's nutritious tail, what would it be in that nutritious tail? It would be dragging all of the umbilical cord, which attaches to the what? To the bag of manna, which is the baby's food supply. All right, it's the placenta. So the stones would fall, and then the placenta would cook. And I guess it just kept rotating around the Earth for years and years and years. And they'd go out every morning and pick up some more of the bread. Now, the impact on Mars, here's where it gets tricky. Because now we know it hit Earth about 1300, 1500. It appears it went on and off for a while. Now, the impact on Mars, he suggested Venus later struck Mars, causing to approach Earth in 686. Well, Mars was totally wiped out. Now, what date that happened, I don't know. Because Rome was founded by the sons of Mars, who was Ares, the god of war. And his sons were Romulus and Remus, and they founded Rome. And the way I see it, I think Rome was founded in 763, something like that. So these time frames are pretty close. And why would Mars come down to Earth to found Rome? Because he had his own planet, except now his planet was dead. The planet was toast, and it still is toast today. So he came to be the protector of Rome, but because of his warlike nature, he started a lot of wars. Roman Empire just... That's the way I'm seeing it now. I could be wrong. Don't forget, this is it. That's the great red spot, and that little tag is in the vagina. That's the size of it, and that's literally just exactly the size of Venus. Coming out, it would roll backwards, and it did, and it still does. These membranes are gigantic. This heart in space, Bennu, they landed on it and brought the sample back, and here's the sample right here. And that sample is muscle sarcomeres, which are the same muscle sarcomeres as in the heart here on Earth. And the same muscle sarcomeres that are up on Mars. Tendons, membranes, 6 feet thick. mucous membranes, interstitium. Same thing that's in us. Impact site, Grand Canyon, ripped to the guts, and I mean the guts. I know I've shown all this, but I can't. People, it bounces off them. It's just it's devastating to the mind. But it is what it is, and until we pay attention to it, we just living in a sort of a lost world, searching for answers and not accepting the ones when we find them. This has been here for 2 years. There is zero question about this. And if any true anatomist, biologist, chemist, botanist, whoever, there's just no explanation. These are muscle sarcomeres. These are muscle phosphate layers, phospholipids, and that's what here, and that's rope bundles of muscle. And this is what they brought back from Bennu, which is a heart, and it looks like a heart because it is a heart. And there's the valves of the heart, and it's just floating around in space. And they whacked this thing hard, and they went deep down inside, and these are the colors of blood, and they went down and grabbed a chunk and brought it back to Earth. And that is it right there, and it is identical to muscle sarcomeres of a heart here on Earth, which is this. No difference whatsoever. Zero différence. No différence. And we know right here on Earth we got giant membranes that are just 6 feet thick. I mean, there's nobody can deny this. It's just not deniable. It's just dismissible. Don't show me. I don't want to see it. Stay away. Don't come here. And that's the response from academia, who it's their fiduciary obligation. It's legal, and it's a legal obligation. They could be sued with a class action lawsuit. All you got to do is have a couple of people stand up and say, "You people defrauded us." In my opinion, that's what they might have to do. It's just my opinion. And say, what happened here? 10 years ago, you should have known this. You should have presented the truth to us. And not acting in a good fiduciary, that's, for 10 years, that's, well, first of all, it's disgraceful. But secondly, I think there might be some legal obligations there. You know, and it's not something I've hidden. I tried to make it so that they could not avoid responding, and they avoided responding. I then took credit for my work. In my opinion, Yale took credit for my work and abused the public trust by taking money from NASA and abusing, you know, the funding, because it was already done. I had all this stuff done, but I had giants. That's the key. My stuff was giants. Like the hair follicle right there. That's just gigantic hair follicle, 2 inches wide. And I have DNA tested, CAT scanned fingers, hands, over and over and over and over and over. So people say, "Oh, you keep showing the same stuff." Well, what do you want me to do? It's not being talked about in mainstream. You're going to have to step up and start talking. Instead of people, you know, I'm done walking around in circles. And these proves there was giants and battles in the heavens, and that's another heart. 170 miles across, and that is a tube coming out. That's not a crater. That's not a crater. And these are the valves, and these are, again, the colors of blood. This is the tendon that wraps around and holds and all the plumbing just pops right off of here because there's iron banding. You see these different colors? There's a band of different colors here, and they oppose each other and just go, it pops right off. And all of the plumbing across the top, as you will see right here, right to there, it pops right off. And you end up with this. It's the same as this. There's no difference. All right, there's you can see the tendon is still here. In this one, the tendon is still here. This one, they're not showing it with the tendon, they're just showing the muscle underneath. And I suppose sometimes the tendon does come off. But this one, they're just showing the muscle under. This one has the muscle under, but it also has the tendon right there. So this is even better. Better than anatomical. And that's what we're looking down into, is these heart valves. Any heart surgeon, please comment, ask somebody, talk to somebody that's a heart surgeon. You know, if you have a doctor, ask a doctor. Say, you know, somebody's got to look at this. This is what our real, true reality is. And this is, I think it's something that should be considered. At least you should have the ability to think about it. You know, not say, don't let this guy speak. He's going to confuse people. It's confusing, absolutely. But when you just follow what somebody tells you to say, that's not what we're here for, I don't think. Not for me. You see this? This is the key. Lack of physical evidence. Velikovsky had all of these recorded texts. He knew everything, but lack of physical evidence for these catastrophes. I showed you the catastrophes. I showed you the combatants. Scientific community rejected Velikovsky's theories with venom, deeming them pseudo-scientific. When they say that word, it means he's an idiot, and not supported by astronomical observation or geological evidence. Well, that is not the case anymore. And as you saw, all of this stuff supports exactly what Velikovsky said. And Venus has the impact scars, which is just a welding arc. It's just sucking in all the energy. Because it's spin backwards, it's a sucker. The other ones are pushers, and this is a sucker. Now, that banged into Mars here and just destroyed Mars, wiped it right out, dry as a bone. All the magnetic fields gone, no vegetation that I have ever seen. There might be a little, you know, it would take a bazillion years to come back, but he was a god. And Venus is a god too. And I think Venus could very, very, very likely be Jesus Christ. You know, all I can tell you is he was born from God, and Zeus, or Jupiter, whoever you want to call him, that's where Venus came from, and Venus did Jupiter's bidding of slaying the Earth of all its terribleness. It started back right up again, but it doesn't matter. He wiped out all the giants, because it was just absolutely staggeringly bad if you read these ancient texts, which it would be. They were 2.5 miles tall. What do you eat? What could they eat? They would end up eating each other. So anyway, that's... God was justified in wiping them out. They had to go. All right, this is a fabulous place. It's the Internet Archive, Emanuel Velikovsky, and this is his books in Audible, and there's no commercials, nothing. It's absolutely fabulous. Now, I'm on chapter 4 of Worlds in Collision. Now listen to how he starts it out. This is 30 minutes long, so I'm only going a couple of minutes. But at some point, I would like to get into his entire works in a series. But listen to what it has to say.
Chapter 4. Boiling Earth and Sea. Two celestial bodies were driven near to each other. The interior of the terrestrial globe pushed toward the exterior. The Earth, disturbed in its rotation, developed heat. The land surface became hot. Various sources of many peoples describe the melting of the Earth's surface and the boiling of the sea. The Earth burst and lava flowed. The Mexican sacred book Popol Vuh, the manuscript Cachiquel, the manuscript Troano all record how the mountains in every part of the Western Hemisphere simultaneously gushed lava. The volcanoes that opened along the entire chain of the Cordilleras and in other mountain ranges and on flat land vomited fire, vapor, and torrents of lava. These and other Mexican sources relate how, at the closing hours of the age that was brought to an end by the rain of fire, mountains swelled under the pressure of molten masses, and new ridges rose. New volcanoes sprang out of the earth, and streams of lava flowed out of the cleft earth. Events underlying Greek and Mexican traditions are narrated in the scriptures. The mountains shake with the swelling, the earth melted. Clouds and darkness, fire, the earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax. He looked on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. The earth trembled, the mountains melted, even that Sinai. He rebuketh the sea, and maketh it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is burned, yea, the world and all that dwell therein. The rivers steamed, and even the bottom of the sea boiled here and there. The sea boiled, all the shores of the ocean boiled, all the middle of it boiled, says the Zend Avesta. The star Tistria made the sea boil. The traditions of the Indians retain the memory of this boiling of the water in river and sea. The tribes of British Columbia tell, great clouds appeared. Such a great heat came that finally the water boiled. People jumped into the streams and lakes to cool themselves and died. On the North Pacific coast of America, the tribes insist that the ocean boiled. It grew very hot. Many animals jumped into the water to save themselves, but the water began to boil. The Indians of the southern Ute tribe in Colorado record in their legends that the rivers boiled. Jewish tradition, as preserved in the rabbinical sources, declares that the mire at the bottom of the Sea of Passage was heated. The Lord fought against the Egyptians with the pillar of cloud and fire. The mire was heated to the boiling point by the pillar of fire. The rabbinical sources say also that the pillar of fire and of smoke levelled mountains. Hesiod, in his Theogony, relating the upheaval caused by a celestial collision, says, "The huge earth groaned. A great part of the huge earth was scorched by the terrible vapour, and melted as tin melts when heated by man's art, or as iron, which is hardest of all things, is softened by glowing fire in mountain glens." According to the traditions of the New World, the profile of the land changed in a catastrophe. New valleys were formed, mountain ridges were torn apart, new gulfs were cut out, ancient heights were overturned, and new ones sprang up. The few survivors of the ruined world were enveloped in darkness. The sun in some way did not exist, and in intervals in the light of blazing fires they saw the silhouettes of new mountains. The Mayan sacred book Popol Vuh says that the god rolled mountains and removed mountains, and great and small mountains moved and shaked. Mountains swelled with lava. Koniraya Viracocha, the god of the Incas, raised mountains from the flat land and flattened other mountains. And similarly, when Israel went out of Egypt, the sea saw and fled. The mountains skipped like rams, and the little hills like lambs. Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord, which removeth the mountains, which overturneth them in his anger, which shaketh the earth out of her place, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea. Mount Sinai. Along the eastern shore of the Red Sea, there stretches a mountainous crest with a number of volcanic craters.
All right, this is very, very long, very, very excellent, and a very, very good source, and I am appreciative of being able to use this. There appears to be no restrictions. Now, let me just show you something else to consider. Okay, I think I probably showed you this, but you can't see it too often. These are uranium mines. This was the impact site, and this whole area is just torn to shreds, and you're actually down inside the biology of some gigantic creature. It would have had the surface on it, just like all the rest of them. They have all the little balls all over, the Moki marbles and all that. Well, this came in and just ripped the guts down into the guts. And I'm serious, guts. This is guts. That's just not there for no reason. This is bloody guts. And that is membranes. And because it hit in this area and ripped all the top stuff off way down to inside, all that stuff went below. And I can see where, it appears to me, where it did go. You see, it ripped it all off here and threw it down here. You see all this stuff? I think that's where all the top of this guy's body went, smashed. Now, and it just oozed down here, you see? Up here, it's just nothing but blood and guts. And I mean that, I'm serious, blood and guts. And that, right down into these areas down in here, you can see this must have been very close to the impact site, or if there was an impact, I don't know. It went deep. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. These are body parts of something, and this is different chemistry based on this something here going on, whether this is a lymph node or what it is. If it had a whole bunch of filters around the outside, it would definitely be a lymph node. I don't see that. I don't see that. But this is not, look at this. Look at this. You got to take your time and look at what you're seeing. These different colors are different transition metals, and this is tendon. That I'm almost 100% sure is tendon. And you see these fibrils? It's laying sort of like this. And these are look like scales on top of it or something. This could be inside of the gut. This could be inside of the throat. Everything is laid out flat now, a lot of it. But you see that? Look at this. Look at this. Well, that's somebody's plowing that or whatever they're doing. Now, is that from a vein and an artery? I don't know. Well, look at this. This is biology. That is literally undeniable. And you come over to here and it transitions into this red bloody stuff, which is muscle, fleshy. And this, I'm afraid, was just gouged right out of here when it came in. And I can show that on the map, the uranium mines, which I think I did. But right down in here is about around the edge, and this is the other side. This was the main impact zone, because it hit here. It ended up squirting here. So follow that trail back. I'd say right there. And it looks like it is. That's the impact site. Pushed all this stuff down. Right there, I would say, is basically ground zero. Let's let it settle in for a minute. But that's the flattest spot I'm seeing anyway. And it just pushed everything this way. See, these different colors represent different chemistry in the body. We didn't put those colors there. Most of that stuff, I mean, sometimes that does happen. But when you see these different kind of colors, and when they're close and they're mixing together and stuff, that is chemistry of the body. That's enzymes, secretions, these green colors, and a lot of times salts. Salts are secretions. You see the color, that color, then you got the real blue, then you got this color green, and then you got some kind of glowy stuff, and then you got turquoise, and all these different colors represent different chemistry. Now we exploit that, yes, and I see they are exploiting that particular chemistry, but that's because that's in the guts of a creature. And it has all kinds of enzymes and bacteria and stuff doing that work. Because they're able to just drive into there because they're driving in the guts of a creature. And what they're doing over here, I don't know. But that's more guts. The black, the red, the different colors, all of that fiber, that is the way the circulatory system works. Everything has to be fed with blood continuously. And these are basically the blood vessels. And then they run down into little bits and pieces coming out of here. And eventually they collect in the veins. And you can't see really good here, but you can absolutely see it over where the fish is, because the typhon, his toxins right here ate right into the fish's back. So here he is, the whole length from here all the way across. His thighs were the shape of humans. He had big coils, and if you look close at that stuff, that's skin. Well, I can't make these statements and then walk away from them. There it is right there. If you think that is sand dunes, you're not looking. You have to come in and look at it close. You say, oh, no, those are sand dunes. Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not. I say they're not. And as we get closer and closer to them, we can see the structure of them. And we can see that is not a sand dune. You see that? These are actually the fibers that are in like ostrich skin or something like that. You see these? We show these to any guy that does tanning or works with hides, or works with leather, or tools leather, or even has anything to do with ostriches or stuff like that. That's what that is. Now, all the way up, he's spitting on the fish, and here is the veins and arteries. Because what it did is it ate through, well, here it is, coming down. Comes out of his beards, literally comes out of his beards. Those two beards. All right? It comes right out of his beard and down, and it hits that fish's fin. And it continues on into his vital flesh. It didn't get past there, but it was all over at that point. Now, these are like flaming, fiery, noxious chemistry that ate through his scales. They ate the scales right off. They're gone. And that allowed it to sink right down into the flesh, which attacked all of this stuff and killed it like that. Now, these are arteries, the big ones. The other ones are blood vessels. And they come down and they get smaller and smaller and smaller until you get to, you see this artery? Then down through the blood vessel network, and then down into what you call capillaries, which are right in here. These are all capillaries where they pinch off to almost nothing. And that's the only thing that's allowed to pass out into the vein. That's a vein. This stuff is good and edible, but you know the creature's dead. But that's where the edible stuff is, and then the leftovers they just push right into the vein. Now, you see how this is all webbed out here? You see all that webbing? That is the lymph ducts. They collect around a lot around the veins, because the veins are the last bit in flow. You see right here, look at this spot. These are all lymph ducts. They're coming in to suck up all that juices that shouldn't go into the veins. See how fine those are? They take almost, they will only absorb the fineness of what they can pull in here. And in that, you can have enzymes, bacteria, but you're not going to get these big chunks of things, which is what you want to flush out of here. And then it feeds it back into the lymph nodes, into the lymph ducts. They travel around the body, protecting your body from invasion. And they're everywhere. You know, always the red blood ends up going into the tissues and then dumping into the veins. Every one of these has veins surrounding it. Every one of them. And they all have the same structure at the end. They have the capillaries, and at the very end, inside here, they have all the little lymph fibers. And this is because that toxin was so tough that it ate right through the scales. Right into here. The scales are still here on these. You see the scales? They're weathered and they've taken on some chemistry, but they're still scales. Up here they're gone. And here is where the worst of the worst was the attack. Right there. That green stuff is that killer stuff. And here it is attacking the fish, and the fish is trying to fight back with these fluids. And it's just, they can't do it. They're bringing them down to the lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are overwhelmed and died. And the whole row of them died. We have lymph nodes in us. Exactly the same thing. And it's the exact same thing would happen. That's exactly what happens. If you can't get rid of that toxin fast enough, it overwhelms your lymph nodes. Your lymph nodes go. That's lymphoma. You die. And the only thing that can overcome a lot of that stuff is the right enzyme. You need an enzyme. But the enzymes are produced by the bacteria. We have to know what bacteria is for what toxin or for whatever. Because some people are affected, some people aren't. Even by, well, I'm not going to talk about medical stuff, but just put it this way. Everybody knows people that get sick and people that don't get sick. And the people that get sick, in my opinion, probably don't poop right because they're not digesting right, so they're not getting the stuff they need, and they're not feeding the bacteria that they need to produce the enzymes to do that chemistry. So I suppose I've run my mouth a sufficient amount. But I'm going to tell you right now, this earth, it's nothing but biology. Nothing but biology. Alright, so stay tuned for reality. And I say that was hit by Venus causing uranium mines because of the impact of that energy into that area and ripping the guts right out of it. Alright, so lost in space. Stay with me, because all I'm doing is trying to show what there's evidence to support. I'm not making any unsubstantiated claims. That's the key. And it is a fiduciary duty for a teaching institution, especially Yale, to investigate this kind of evidence and not distort it. And in my opinion, they distorted it for their own personal benefit. And I don't think that's right. Maybe you do, I don't. And I don't think it's right what they're doing about asteroid Bennu. Here it is right here. There's no question it's the muscles. They have everything, the DNA, the RNA, the uracil, the rope, the sarcomeres, the membranes, the phospholipids. They have everything, 100%. And it came out of something that was a heart, right off of there. And they have another one out there, Psyche, which is this one, the monster. Absolutely enormous. But they said there was battles in the heavens. These creatures could turn themselves into virtually anything they wanted. That's what Ovid said. Now, how big they could make themselves, I don't know. If they were battling in the heavens, could they make themselves, I don't know how big they could make themselves. Would they do that? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you what, that's 170 miles across. And that is a tube coming out, which would have serviced something in there, and these are the valves, and that's over and over and over and over. Now, if you don't confront your professors and people, everybody, I don't care who it is, don't stand back, don't, and you should just bring it up. Say, have you seen this? Did you hear about that? Do you know what they're saying about Jupiter? So you got to approach it in a certain way. I tried that. I tried everything. Not a thing worked.
This is a reminder.